You might be wondering why all the money was on fire in the intro. Because today is the top 5 times companies lit billions of dollars on fire. The 5 worst buyouts in corporate history. We don't hear about these as often. Sometimes a company will buy a company for a lot of money and then realize, oh, fuck, we've goofed it, so to speak. Today, we're talking about those. Let's get to the top 5, baby. Yahoo buys Tumblr. I thought long and hard about how I was going to explain the myriad of ways this was a dumb deal. So I thought, what's a hot meme right now? Oh, those trade deals memes. Trade offer. You receive $1.1 billion. No, I receive $1.1 billion. You receive $3 million a few years later and a bunch of furry porn. Marissa Mayer, CEO of Yahoo, basically spent $1.1 billion, $1.097 billion for a lot of furry porn. That's essentially it. So the plan was for the SS Yahoo here to be pulled by Tumblr into the future. Tumblr was big with millennials, which at the time were what we called Zoomers. Millennials love this internet thing. They love memes. And Tumblr got it. And Yahoo wanted a piece of that. What she didn't understand was the sheer amount of porn on the website as well. A lot of porn. Not just the memes, but a lot of porn. So, when she bought the company for $1.1 billion, the plan that she enacted after a year was a revenue goal. She said, all right, okay. First, she said she was going to be hands off. The first thing she said was, all right, Yahoo's going to be hands off because we don't get it. We know you guys, you Tumblr, you guys are hip. We're going to be hands off. But then about a year passed and they realized, all right, well, we did spend $1 billion and you're not making any money. Tumblr, we just realized you're not making any money. So now you have we're setting an ultimatum. You have to make $100 million this year. That was what, and apparently the truth is, well, from reading into it, that number was completely pulled out of her ass. There was no like math behind it. She was just like, all right, make $100 million this year. And so now the ad sales team at Tumblr is freaking out. They're like, how the fuck are we going to sell that many ads? And they start like desperately calling everybody and trying to sell the ads. And what they realize is most big companies that spend a lot of money on ads don't really want to be next to furry porn. Frantically, Tumblr banned all porn because they had to hit that goal. If you're wondering why Tumblr out of the blue banned porn, it's because they had to hit $100 million. But all that did was drive the few people that were still using Tumblr off the website. I mean, without the porn, Tumblr was just old memes at that point because the rise of Snapchat and other companies at this time was now eating heavily into Tumblr's market share. So with a 1-2 punch, they just killed Tumblr. And by the way, they did not hit the revenue goal. And then Yahoo offloaded Tumblr for, I think, like, $3 million. $3 million, dude. They offloaded Tumblr for like what Ludwig made during the subathon. This is what $1,000,000,001 looks like. This is what $3 million looks like. They just burned this money. Number 4 is a 2-parter, starting with Microsoft buying Nokia in 2012. Now, if you're wondering who these people are, that's the CEO of Nokia smiling because he just made a fuck ton of money for bad phones. And this is the CEO of Microsoft, Steve Ballmer, smiling because he's an idiot. But he did have that moment, famously.
Developers.
Anyway, it goes on for 3 minutes. But you get the idea. He was a big, sweaty, loud, yelling man who had gotten obscenely rich as Microsoft grew in the 90s and essentially ran it into the nowhere. It didn't go down, it didn't go up, it just stayed still for like 10 years. And then they got a new CEO and now Microsoft's worth like $1 trillion. So, but he brilliantly in 2012 realized, hey, you know this iPhone thing that came out 5 years ago? it's doing pretty well. We should get in on that. So 5 years after the iPhone, they decided to make their own. They thought, okay, we have to get into that game. Mobile's getting kind of big. And so acting with the speed that you can tell this man has, they bought Nokia for $7 billion. Okay? They made, famously, the Windows Phone. What a gorgeous piece of tech. The Nokia Windows Phone. Can you guys even remember what life was like before our Windows phones? Anyway, turns out this did not light the world on fire. Just so we don't forget, Microsoft acquired all these buildings, right? I mean, when they got them, by the end of it in 2015, this is 2 years later, only 2 years after owning the company that had lasted forever, they fired 15,000 employees. And they wrote off a $7.6 billion loss. Now, they only paid $7 billion to buy it. So they bought it and then had to write off $7.6 billion more. 15,000 fired, money lost left and right, no phones sold, Nokia brand collapsed, all because they thought they could compete with the iPhone. But Google said, let's not get outdone here, okay? Let's not get outdone here. We can spend a lot of money on phones too. So famously, Google bought Motorola. And they said, all right, $7 billion for a phone company, that's chump change. All right, let's do you one bigger. Let's go 12.5. So they bought Motorola for 12.5, thinking, all right, now that's going to fuck over the iPhone. But the problem was Motorola couldn't make good phones. This might not even be Google's fault. I don't know. But let me tell you, Motorola could not make a quality phone to compete in the modern smartphone era. And so by 2014, which was only 2 years after they bought them, Google thought that the phones they were making were so ugly and poorly constructed that while they still owned Motorola, they went to Samsung and LG and begged them to make their phones for them. And in 2014, they sold them off, realizing it was a bad deal, for $2 billion. So if you're doing the math, that's $10 billion lost in 2 years on a bunch of shitty phones that didn't sell. And that is why it is in my top 4. What a stupid, stupid acquisition. Number 3. All right, to understand number 3, you have to watch this clip, okay?
We can take this thing called the radio and put it on this new thing called the internet.
Wait, next thing you know, we IPO, stock triples in a day, and AOL gobbles us up.
So that's Mark Cuban to a T. That is literally the story of Mark Cuban, because number 3, radio on the internet, was Yahoo's acquisition of broadcast.com. In the late 90s, at the height of the .com, when you could say anything on the internet, you'd make a bunch of money. Mark Cuban invented broadcast.com, radio on the internet. Now remember, Twitch is essentially the modern version of broadcast.com, right? But with actual video. Twitch sold for about $1 billion, a little under $1 billion, okay? Broadcast.com in the 90s sold for $5.7 billion. Basically 6 times Twitch. I think at the math, they literally could have they could have given people $1,000 to try broadcast.com and it would have been a better use of money. And Mark Cuban was not dumb in this. Mark Cuban was maybe a scammer, but he did not think that radio on the internet was smart, because the second he got his Yahoo stock, the second he sold all of it that he could, and the stuff he couldn't sell, he made a bet. It's called a strangle in options, but he basically made a bet that it would go down. And so when it did go down, because he couldn't sell it, he made money off that. He basically knew instantly. And he used that to get $1 billion, join the Trace Thomas Club, and buy the Dallas Mavericks. And he's never been out of our cultural consciousness ever since. Yeah, it was. I'm sorry, just to confirm. It was $10,000 per user. They had about 500,000 users on broadcast.com. 500,000 users for 5.7 billion is it's just so stupid. Were they outbidding anyone? I don't even think so. There wasn't even a bidding war, bro. It was just like Yahoo's like, we can't. I don't even ask for one. We won't give it to you. We'll give you 5. You deserve too much, King. Radio on the internet, that is genius. Number 2. Now, I think you Zoomers might remember something that happened in about 2007, 2008. Maybe you remember. It was a big economic thing. Maybe you remember it. So right before that, like actually basically as it was happening, not even before it, but like as everyone was like, oh, fuck. This housing bubble's kind of bursting. Bank of America acquired Countrywide, which is a mortgage lending firm. Now, you could be forgiven for not knowing Countrywide banking and home loans. Again, what Zoomer or millennial is ever going to buy a house? We wouldn't know what this is. But it's the largest mortgage lender in America. So they had lended a bunch of mortgages to people across the country at the height of the housing boom. And Bank of America said, holy shit, this mortgage business looks great. This looks fucking awesome. You guys are making money hand over fist. Let's buy you. So they bought Countrywide for $2 billion. And that seems cheap at the time. Everyone's like, wow, what a great deal. Why was Countrywide willing to sell for only $2 billion? They're making money hand over fist. $2 billion is nothing. This is a great deal. For most of these acquisitions, like if you buy Tumblr for $1.1 billion and Tumblr goes to zero, then what you've lost is $1.1 billion. That's terrible. But if you buy a company that lends people money, then you've also acquired their debt. So you can lose more than what you paid. So Bank of America bought Countrywide for $2.2 billion. And that's a lot of money, of course. But if they had just lost that, it would be like, whatever, you know? Damn, we made a mistake. That was dumb. But they also acquired all of Countrywide's outstanding debt. And they found out instantly. Like the second the deal was signed, the housing market started really collapsing. And they started realizing all of these mortgages were lended to people who can't pay them back, which means it's just a bunch of outstanding debt. And within a few months, I believe Bank of America had to pay $50 billion in outstanding debt on the Countrywide mortgages. Which means they spent $2 billion for the right to spend $50 billion. Which really is the dumbest fucking thing I've ever heard. I'm so shocked that we live in a world where this is not number one. I'm shocked. But there is a worse one. Spending $2 billion for the right to lose $50 billion. Someone's been dumber than that. Drum roll, please. Worst merger acquisition of all time. Let me set the stage. It took place again at the height of the .com bubble. I'm going to show you a company.
Every day, America Online is making it easier
called
for people
America
to live,
Online.
work, and play.
All you need is a computer and a regular phone line. They send you the software and give you 10 free hours to check it out.
10 free hours.
Call now for your free America Online.
So you might notice a couple things from this commercial of America Online at its peak. One, most importantly, they charged you by the hour. And it was slow. It was dial-up that charged you by the hour. That's a business model that can never go out of style. So let me show you their stock chart. This is it. 1992, the company goes public for $61 million. By 97, they're worth $4 billion. People love them. By 98, they're worth $19 billion. By 99, they're worth $105 billion. By 2000, They're worth $160 billion. One of the most valuable media companies on planet Earth at this $160 billion market cap, which I'm sure will rise even more to the moon, like GameStop stock. At this point, they decided they wanted to go shopping, and they found a sucker. Let me show you this man. This man was the CEO of Time Warner Communications. And because of the magic of the internet and the magic of people getting way too excited about stocks, cough, GameStop, cough, Dogecoin, cough, Tesla. This is about what AOL actually made, was worth this much. And Time Warner, which made about this much money, it was kind of worth what it made because it was an old media company. So people think it wasn't going to grow. So Time Warner was, despite making about 10x what AOL did, it was worth about half. And so AOL was like, okay, we'll buy you. And Time Warner should have been like, fuck you. We make way more money than you. We should buy you. You're a scam. But instead they said, oh shit, really? We'd love to be part of the internet. We don't really get it. This is an old clip of them quizzing the CEO on why he would do this deal.
80% of the cash flow of this combined company will come from your company, and yet your shareholders will own only 45%. Why were you willing to sign off on a deal?
Oh, well, pretty clearly, if you looked at last Friday, the market cap of AOL was twice the size of Time Warner. I've made a judgment, which I believe to be correct, that going forward, the Time Warner shareholders will be much better off owning 45% of AOL Time Warner than 100% of Time Warner.
Yeah, he was wrong. He was wrong. So instead of owning all of a big media company, he gave up over half of his company. They definitely knew. He didn't know, because if you want to know what he thinks about this, they actually interviewed. I found an interview with him years later. He said, I'd like to forget it. I almost didn't do this interview because I didn't want to dig it up again. Let it pass into history. This should pass into history like the Vietnam War and the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. It's one of the biggest disasters that have occurred to our country. I lost 80% of my worth and subsequently lost my job. We looked it up to see if I was the biggest loser of all time because I lost about $8 billion personally. That guy in the clip earlier. The second the deal completes, this happens. Let's pull it up and get rid of my black boxes. It goes from this to this. Because this thing called broadband comes out and people don't want to pay by the hour. So all of this AOL stock, by the way, this deal was done with stock. What that means is they bought Time Warner Cable with AOL stock. So everyone at Time Warner just got AOL stock. They didn't get money. The next year, not only did they lose all that money, they have to do a write-down of, drumroll please, $99 billion lost in a single quarter, the highest loss in business history. Everyone involved lost money. Tons of people were fired. It was a massive blow-up, massive disaster, and both companies have been worse ever since. That's the end of the story, except for one thing. But this guy, Scott Ahrens, said, together they're an unprecedented powerhouse. If their mantra is content, this alliance is unbeatable. Now they have this great platform that can cross-fertilize with content. Just buzzwords, just trash buzzwords. The kind of shit people say about Dogecoin and fucking Tesla today. But I was like, you know what? I'm kind of interested. Where is Scott Ahrens now? I saw this article and I was like, this guy was so fucking wrong. I wonder what he's doing now. So I Googled him. I did some little light e-stalking. And I found out he had done an interview with people asking, with PBS. PBS did an expose. They were asking, why the fuck did all these .com stocks crash? Like, how did everyone get so duped? Because he said He said pets.com was going to the moon. He said theglobe.com was going to the moon. They looked at all of his history, because what analysts do, right, is they recommend to the public if you should buy or sell or hold a stock. And they looked at all of his recommendations. They realized over his entire career, he never, ever said to sell. And he told the public to buy, buy, buy. Okay? And they found out he never, ever, ever issued a sell. And PBS started calling him out on it. PBS was like, hey, what you're doing is corrupt. He said, right here, I found this line. They said, you never said you don't like a stock. You only said you like it. You said, no, he said, that's not true at all. I said I didn't like stocks all the time. And then they said, do you remember an example? And he said, yeah, I said it about Amazon. I was one of the first people to turn negative on Amazon. That was the one example in his whole career of pumping shitty internet stocks of a time he said you shouldn't buy. So I just want to close this Targeting Tuesday by saying I think I found the biggest idiot in Wall Street history. If you had just inversed every one of this guy's bets, you'd be a billionaire. Anyway, that's the end of Targeting Tuesday, the top 5 worst acquisitions of all time. Thank you for watching. Targeting Tuesday in the books. Say bye to YouTube. Bye, YouTube.
Check it.